Hi, it's Geno from Music Villa, episode of Geno Likes here. Today we're going to talk about studio monitors, what makes a studio monitor different from a stereo speaker, why you need a studio monitor, etc., etc. So today we have three products that we carry in the store and also a speaker switcher, which we'll talk about in a minute. But first I just kind of talk about why you might want a studio monitor. A lot of times if you've ever got to be in a recording studio, you'll see that they have generally 2, 3, even sometimes up to as many five different sets of speakers in there. And usually what you have in there are studio monitors, or we call reference monitor. What that's for is it's supposed to give you, I like to say, one in, one out. So if you're at a certain frequency and you give it, 80 decibels, that speaker should give you a flat representation of the sound you're putting in. So that way you can really hear the different instruments. You can mess with this if you listen to like maybe a shaker in your favorite song and listen to 2 or 3 speakers. You'll be like, wow, I can really hear it in that one, can't hear it in that one. The other problem is when you start mixing things, and if you mix them to your car, which ultimately makes sense because where a lot of people listen to music, you might find that you're boosting low end too much, and when you put it in your car, it's overwhelming. So these are kind of the reasons that you use these, especially when you're tracking, when you're recording. So that being said, let's jump into a few of these things and talk about what each of them does. First, let's start with the Yamaha HS5. Definitely one of our best-selling studio monitors in the store. We've been selling them for years. They give you a 5-inch woofer and a 1-inch dome tweeter here. The neat thing about the Yamaha, this monitor is the only one that we keep in stock that's actually bi-amped, and that means there's 2 separate power amps, one power amp driving the high end and one power amp driving the low end, 45 watts and 25 watts for a total of 70. And a lot of efficiency when you bi-amp a speaker. There's a little bit of voicing here. Now, we did talk about these being flat reference, but sometimes you actually find, and I'm sure you found this in rooms, it's like, boy, my high end seems to disappear in here. The fancier systems will actually flatten the room for you, and you may actually start with a curve that's not flat. So they just give you a little bit of voicing here. My eyes are kind of bad. So we have high-end trim and then an overall control room control, which will give you 4 dB of boost. Here's your inputs, and it's pretty simple. It's just basically one input on this and a level control. You can see that it's also rear ported. These are great little speakers. I highly recommend these. One thing also that I didn't mention first is you might notice the reason that engineers use different monitors is they're just like anything else. Guitar bodies. You have a smaller guitar body, has a different resonant frequency, a different tone. Same thing with speakers. Even though they build these things to kind of isolate, but you can't get all tones out of one speaker. So it's really nice to listen to them on big ones, little ones, sometimes even maybe an iPhone sitting there is a good thing to do some playback on. The newer addition to Music Villa's studio monitors are the PreSonus Eris series. We carry the 3.5 and the 4.5. Those numbers corresponding to the size of the Kevlar woofer that each speaker has. Both have the same power amp. It's an AB, Class AB 50-watt power amp. They are not bi-amped like the Yamahas are. A little more affordable, obviously. They're still isolated and sound great. There's a little bit of a difference on the back of these, so let's take a peek at them. We'll start with the 4.5. Just like on the Yamaha, we have a little bit of voicing. PreSonus calls it acoustic tuning. I have a mid control and a high control, and there's also a low cut here, which can be really helpful if you're using it with a subwoofer. Then you have kind of, again, an overall level control. That's really a gain setting. Sometimes if you're having a hard time getting enough sensitivity, you may need to change that. 2 types of inputs, even though there's just one input on it. And the PreSonus speakers do something kind of interesting. Everything, it's mainly for cost. All the power amp and everything is inside the one speaker. And what you do is you just power this left or right side, and then you actually have an old-fashioned speaker jumper to jump to the other side. So that's the 4.5. Oh yeah, I need to mention they're also rear ported, just like the Yamaha. Then the 3.5, a little bit smaller, kind of the same features but done a little bit differently. You don't have as much of the switching for the gain input. You don't have the low cut. But these are really super affordable. They're great. They're lightweight. I could actually use a set of these because of what I just said. again, these speakers are being very similar as far as how they're built, but because the voice is different, it's really good to be able to switch between two. I tend to use a couple of great big ones and am always thinking, boy, I could use some smaller ones. Which brings me to the next product we're going to look at really quickly. This is the Mackie Big Knob. I don't know where they got the name. But what's great about this, there's lots of products like this out on the market. I love this one because it allows you to switch two input sources and, more importantly, two output sources. So I would run that to two separate monitors so I can switch back and forth. Mackie did some great stuff here. There's a mono sum, so if you want to hear your mix in mono. Quick mute, which is great for just when you're working. Sometimes you just need to shut that off. They also put a dim switch on here. This is really cool. This is a 20 dB cut. So if you're mixing and you're sitting there talking about a part of the song, instead of having to go turn down what you were doing, you can actually just hit that. It brings it down 20 dB. You can converse about that part of the project and get that going again. On the back, it's just a couple of different balanced, unbalanced outputs to go to the two speaker sources, those inputs, and I did say there's two input sources. I really like this, so you can actually go from two stereo quarter-inch feeds or use a 3.5 mm line in from a computer or iPhone or something like that. So lots of different options in a small, fun little package. So that's what we have. We have them all on display here at Music Villa. Come on in, bring your ears, bring your favorite mix, and check them out.